Star Ocean is a video game series that started way back on the Super Famicom in 1996. Although this particular version of the game was never made available outside of Japan, it was subject of an enhanced remake for the PlayStation Portable called Star Ocean First Departure back in 2007. It is this remake, having been given the high definition treatment, that now appears on the Nintendo Switch as Star Ocean First Departure R. Is it worth playing these days? Well, I'm Glenn for Switchup, thank you to Square Enix for the review copy, and now let's find out. You begin the game being introduced to three friends, Roddick, Millie and Dawn, who are the defence force for the local village and tackle minor threats such as bandits. Soon in, residents of a nearby town contract a disease that sees people turn to stone, and the team decide to look for a herb that is said to provide the antidote. I won't say any more than this, but a meeting with another team of characters makes it clear that the scale of this series of events is much larger than a few small villages and leads the protagonists on a much grander adventure. I enjoyed the story, and it reminded me a little of Chrono Trigger in some respects, while still feeling like its own thing. Star Ocean First Departure R is a role-playing game that adheres to many of the genre tropes, such as visiting towns, speaking to non-playable characters, getting involved in random battles, and leveling up your characters. However, it also does a lot of things that are quite unique to the genre, with the main one being its battle system. Combat is dealt with in an action-oriented manner, as opposed to the more traditional turn-based style usually found in RPGs of that era. You do not directly control all of your characters, with you instead controlling just one character in battle and setting strategies for the others beforehand. The AI will then control these characters, adhering to the instructions set. To do this, you must pull up the menu screen by pressing the X button, choose the Tactics option, and then Strategy. You can assign each team member an individual instruction, such as to focus on healing allies. They are all fairly basic, but it's certainly a nice change of pace from turn-based combat and gives you some micromanagement responsibilities at the same time. At this point, it's worth noting that when this remake was developed for the PSP back in 2007, it made a few changes to the Super Famicom version, and one of these centered around the combat. Rather than this action now taking place on a single screen as it did in the original, it now takes place in a 3D battlefield, much more akin to what was used in the game's sequel, Star Ocean: The Second Story, which came out on the PlayStation in 1999. Now, I never played the original, so I cannot comment on how this action-led battle system works on a single screen, but on the larger battlefield, it works very well. I like how a team member with a more passive instruction, such as healing, could well be targeted by enemies off-screen, unbeknownst to you whilst you are involved elsewhere. To assist with this, you could set a second member of your team to protect their teammates, alleviating the problem to a degree, although there are still arrows indicating where enemies are, and it would be wise to keep an eye on these to ensure all party members are safe. Another big feature of the battle system though is the use of special abilities. These will be earned as you level up through battle, and two of these can be assigned to each character at a time, one to the L button and one to the R button. They are essentially special moves that are pulled off in battle by pressing either of the aforementioned buttons, and will use up a set amount of your magic points after each use. Some of the individual instructions mentioned previously will tell characters to use or conserve special abilities. I've heard that another change the remake introduced was an overworld map. As far as I understand, the Super Famicom original used separate screens to link towns together, whereas the PSP version brought in a more traditional 3D map to traverse with towns and landmarks visible on it. This is also where you will encounter random battles, and again, I'm led to believe that the encounter rate has been brought down quite dramatically with the remake. They are still pretty frequent though, even with this tweak, and to be honest, they're a little too frequent. There are further battle options such as being able to choose a formation from a set number. These are fairly basic, ranging from a standard line to one fighter out in front, supported by allies, or a more spread out formation. What I did find a bit odd is how this isn't really explained to you at all. If you are familiar with the series, then of course you'll already know, but I spent the first few battles trying to work out how to switch characters before realising that you don't, all the while my AI teammates were taking care of business. Had this been a straight port of the 1996 original, I would have understood, but it strikes me as strange that in neither the 2007 remake or this 2019 remaster of that game, they didn't put a quick couple of lines of text in your first battle just to clarify how it works. Nonetheless, you do pick it up quickly enough, and I worked out how to assign special arts just through playing about in the menus. I also found it a little odd that you could only save on the overworld map, or at these designated save points found strewn across the game. Again, for a game that is a remaster of a remake, it seems odd that they've not fully updated some of these more archaic features. Limiting where you could save doesn't ever really increase the difficulty and acts as more of an inconvenience than anything else, and I'm surprised they didn't revise this when assessing quality of life features to add. You can buy weapons and equipment from various stores using the money you accrue through battle, as well as buying or finding single-use consumables that will restore health or magic power, but the game also offers the skill system. This is another mechanic that I haven't really encountered in other RPGs of the time, and the basic premise is that every time you level up, you earn a skill point. You can put these points into a set of skills that will improve your character. For example, acquiring the Scent skill and then putting your point into Keen Eye will raise the restorative effects of cooked food when eaten. It's a little like a skill tree in some respects. I enjoyed the battle system in this game, finding it quite refreshing, although I must say, it did feel like it made the game quite a bit easier. I never came close to losing a battle until at least 5 hours in, and whilst this didn't impact my enjoyment of the game at all, it may do for others, and it's just worth bearing in mind. Finally, when entering towns, there will sometimes be the option to partake in private actions. This will basically split your party up around the town, giving you the opportunity to speak to them individually and potentially increase affinity towards them or conversely decrease it. This can mean slight changes to the ending you get, although these changes are only slight as far as I understand. In terms of the controls, most of your actions are found in the menu, which is accessed, as I said before, by pressing X. Movement around the screen is controlled with the left stick or the D-pad, and A is your contextual button. New to this remaster is being able to speed up your character's movement by holding down ZR. In battle, the A button handles your basic attack, whereas X will bring up your menu wheel above your character's head, and the L and R buttons will control the special attacks, as I said before. Everything controls well enough, although, as hinted at earlier, you will need to explore a lot of the menus for yourself as the intricacies aren't really explained to you. Gameplay has that familiar feel of 90s RPGs, but is infused with some ideas of its own to freshen up the formula. A lack of explanation for these mechanics and quite a low level of difficulty are unfortunate, but nonetheless I very much enjoyed it, and gameplay receives 17 out of 20. Controls are simple yet effective and also score 17 out of 20. At the start of the game, you are given a few visual and auditory options. First of all, you can choose as to whether you want to have the character portraits from the PSP remake or the newly drawn ones for this remaster. In a similar vein, you can also choose between original Japanese voice actors and a new cast, or alternatively, you can choose English voice acting should you prefer. Whilst this remake uses a pixelated art style reminiscent of the Super Famicom original, it was more than just a case of touching up some of the character sprites. The backgrounds were completely redrawn, instead using a pre-rendered look, and the aforementioned character portraits were also added. Brand new animated cutscenes were created, and the overworld segment is now in 3D as opposed to the overhead screens of the original as mentioned earlier. Whilst the majority of the pixel art is beautiful, with character models in particular recreating that classic look and feel of RPGs of the 90s, there are a few issues. The main one relates to the pre-rendered backgrounds. At first glance, they look lovely and really do help to create the world that these characters inhabit. However, the lack of movement does become noticeably clear as you play and robs the game of feeling like a living, breathing environment. Rivers and streams do not run, trees do not sway, and light does not affect the world as it should. It gives the impression of characters moving about on a canvas painting rather than a living world, albeit a very pleasant looking canvas painting. Whilst the 3D overworlds are fairly basic, mainly used as a tool to link towns together, I did appreciate the fact that the camera has full 360-degree movement in these segments, and the camera angle will change as you enter and leave towns, rather than remaining in a fixed point. In terms of this new version of the remake, the biggest feature is that it is now, of course, available in high definition. The game's audio is appropriate, not just to the genre, but also to each respective scenario that is playing out on screen. It is suitably grandiose when warranted, and more playful and whimsical when the need arises. In my personal opinion, it doesn't quite hit the highs of some of its competition from that era, but that doesn't detract from what is on show here. Visuals are incredibly pleasant, if a little devoid of life at times, and score 17 out of 20. Audio does the job well, without ever really raising the roof, and gets 16 out of 20. Now at the time of this review, Star Ocean First Departure R hadn't officially been added to the eShop, but as far as I understand, the game will cost £16.99, €20.99 or $20.99. If that is incorrect, I will put the correction in the top pinned comment. For this price, you are getting a story mode that will last between 20 to 25 hours, and whilst the changes to this new HD version are fairly minimal, the original remake itself added a good few quality of life features already, such as the overworld map, the larger battle areas, the fully animated cutscenes, and a much more fleshed out voice acting. With all this considered, this price seems very reasonable. Similar games released by Square Enix, such as Romancing Saga 2 and 3, have been priced a fair bit higher than this, and I think they've hit the sweet spot quite nicely this time. Value scores 17 out of 20. To conclude, I really enjoyed my time with this game, and it's great to see another classic RPG on the Switch. Both of Sony's portable systems, the PSP and the PS Vita, had some great RPGs, and it's nice to see a lot of these making their way onto the Switch. I also really appreciate Square Enix bringing over some of the Super Famicom classics that never left Japan first time round. This one of course fits nicely into both of those camps. Star Ocean First Departure R receives a Switchup score of 84%. Many thanks as always everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. I'm still getting over a bit of an illness, so apologies if this audio is not quite up to scratch. I'll do my best to tidy it up, but hopefully it's okay. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.